And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today is one of our series that we're talking to organizational thought leaders, which we define as individuals that are working in organizations or corporations that are practitioners of thought leadership. So today I have as my guest, Alper. He is the VP of Corporate Marketing and Global Thought Leadership Programs at Cognizant Technology Solutions, which is a global IT consulting and business services company. He's got a focus on developing and disseminating thought leadership content ranging from long form to short form, all sorts of video, etc. And he is deep in thought leadership, deep in the corporate world. So welcome aboard, Alan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So first I'm going to ask you the trick question that I have fun asking everybody that's on the organizational thought leadership side is, how do you define thought leadership?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, you ask 10 people at Cognizant, you probably get 20 answers. But what I try to do is I look at it as something that really distinguishes our best and brightest, how we are working hard and are informed about what our clients' challenges are and how we have a proven track record of solving them, and able to really show how we think through and act through it so that at the end, without saying it, we can be perceived as a partner of choice in almost any area that we engage.
Excellent. So let me ask you then, I mean, there's lots of things that you can be curating, creating, developing, deploying, etc. So some people get overwhelmed. How do you make the decisions around the areas to focus on with regard to thought leadership as it relates to aligning to the business metrics?
It's a really good question, because there's a lot of material that comes in over the transom, unsolicited thought leadership. Sometimes I put into the category of vanity thought leadership. Somebody thinks they're really smart and they've got an interesting idea and it makes sense among their elite people in the organization or their clients or their industry. But yet it doesn't really resonate for the rest of us because it's something that they are so caught up on that it's not really clearly communicated. So we look at it and we say, okay, is this an idea that we can own? Is this something we want to be associated with? Is it something that helps us move the needle? If not, I very politely say, look, great idea, but maybe this is a LinkedIn post that you can put on your personal handle. What we try to do is look at where do we want to differentiate and where do we want to excel and be perceived as a leader, be it a thought leader or otherwise. And, the whole industry, all business is moving to a digital landscape. And any way we can be associated with the latest and greatest thinking on the topic, we're all for. So we have what are called 4 digital battlegrounds where we want to excel at and if not win in the marketplace. And they start with AI and data, cloud as the infrastructure, IoT as a means for collecting and better managing the data that you're collecting at the network's edge, and what we call software engineering, which is kind of the modern approach to building new cloud native applications or modernizing existing legacy systems so they can work in the digital age. If the idea fits there, if we have a differentiated point of view, if we have evidence to support our point of view, if we have examples that show how we work, that it's not all just a blue sky thinking,
right.
Then I'm more than willing to sit down and work with our subject matter experts and get something produced.
Got it. So your role is more, you're not the individual tasked at Cognizant, which is a massive company, to be our official thought leader, right? Most of what you're doing is you're adding to the conversation, but you're also extracting the thought leadership from the masses and the curation of it?
It's a good point because, I've been around longer than the commercial PC.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of these cycles before. I can, using the sniff test, I can see what's real and what's Memorex, what's true thought leadership and what's BS.
Yep.
And I do apply that filter to making sure that only the best and brightest ideas get through. Look, I don't like to be a gatekeeper in some cases. As an advisory-led company, a lot of our folks are bonused on their thought leadership. So I don't want to get between somebody and their bonus, but at the same time, I have to protect the integrity of the company and the reputation of the company. So we're not just publishing Me Too materials. The other thing I try to do is that everybody, at least in the professional services world, still today equates thought leadership with long form white papers, published
Yeah.
in PDF form.
That nobody reads anymore, right? With all due respect to white
you
papers.
and I read them because we get paid to read them or write them. But at the end of the day, people don't have the time, the mental acuity,
Yep.
digestive abilities to assimilate, process, and apply long-form content. It's sad, but true. So my thought process is, if somebody's got a good idea, why not look at other forms, other vessels for telling the story?
So I want to push on that for a minute, right? Because the traditional consulting model, if you talk about sort of the Flintstone version of thought leadership was, hey, we'll put out a white paper every year. And there's nothing wrong with that. There was a time and place where I remember the IBM biannual, C-level report. I used to look forward to reading that. Yes, I'm a dork.
Of course, there's still a time and a place for it. Where you're doing primary research, where you have an important story to tell, where you need some space to tell it, where you have lots of facts and figures to support it, of course.
Right. And also the appropriate budget and resources, right? You can't knock one of those things out in 5 hours on your lunch break. Right?
Absolutely. Not inexpensive. Yeah. You have budget, let's talk about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So my question was, how do you take an organization that might be familiar with the white paper, hey, we always do our spring white paper, whatever it is, right? And say to them, let's go crazy here, right? Let's do some short form video. Let's do some infographics. Let's do some explainer videos. Like, first off, you need to be creative, but you don't want to be creative for the sake of being creative. It's like, wait a minute, who is the end user we're trying to get? How do they prefer to consume content? How do we meet them where they are? And I think that's a stress.
It's a good point. And I've been working on this for 5 years, and I can't say I've perfected the process yet, because what I do essentially is say, well, this is a good idea, but here's a better way to tell the story more visually. Or here's another way to tell the story in a shape and form in a vessel that is going to really compel it and entice people to want to read it and to engage.
Yep.
And I go through that whole litany of why and how we can do it. And very often everybody says, yeah, that's a wonderful idea. Let's do it.
Good, great.
Then they ask, but what happens to my white paper? And I say, well, there won't be a white paper. This is going to basically replace the white paper. Now we can serialize the content. We can use multiple transmedia formats for telling the story. What we like to try to do is go with lighter text, a motion graphic, animation, a static graphic, where we have the business case, or a video where we can actually say, let's just do a video to help tell part of the story. And get people to try to, internally, these bright people, to wrap their head around the idea that less can be more.
Got it. So I want to ask you then, given at a firm like Cognizant, you guys are making significant investments in thought leadership. A couple things that you said that got me thinking. One is folks are actually bonused, which leads me to believe somebody somewhere in the comp department or a hire said, this is so important, we're actually, to get their attention, going to make it part of their bonus. How did that evolve? Because what the statement that makes to me is, this is pretty important.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I can't say that I know the genesis of it, but I can figure out that at some point in time, professional services companies, stock and trade, weren't their point of views. Their best and brightest perspective, written by their top people, those gray-haired guys who came in to either help close a deal or to win new business. They're respected, they have influence, they have lots of juice, but to verify and to reinforce that, they needed some sort of credential, and a piece of thought leadership was a credential. I think those people were very comfortable and very effective at conveying their thought leadership. It's when this idea then gets extended to others in the organization down the food chain, where the senior leaders say, well, you're really not going to be effective in your consulting activities unless you've got some IP to prove it with. And that's
interesting. So you've got consultants at a very different scale, almost being held to the publish or perish model of academics, right? Hey, if you claim to be the expert in IoT or AI, and you're going to go out there and work with the world's biggest companies on our behalf, and they're going to pay us top dollar, show me what you're made of. And what I mean by that is, where can I, prior to engaging you, read things that you've wrote, understand your perspective, understand your point of view, that your accolades that you've gotten in the space. That's really what it's about, right?
Yeah, it's prove it. Show me the credentials, show me the IP. Make sure it's pressure tested.
Yes.
But as you go down the food chain, very oftentimes what will happen is you've got junior people who are being asked to do these types of engagements and have some IP to back it with. And at the end of the day, they will, and I'm not saying just at Cognizant, I'm saying across our industry and across all professional services companies, because I look at a lot of this material, it reads like what I learned in my summer vacation. It's a basic internet search,
Right.
a jumble of ideas. There's not a real kind of knitting of or building of an argument that is proven. There's no topic or thesis sentences. It's just written as you would write a kind of a blog, and whatever sticks, it runs. And
well, you've got a generation growing up on, sort of clickbait and listicles, and not everything is the 7 reasons to do X.
No, I agree with you, but that's what attracts visibility, and that's what attracts clicks. And I think at the end of the day, what we need to do is is to really infuse everything we write and say with some critical thinking, with a critical eye for how it's going to be received, how it reflects on our business, how our subject matter experts can be perceived as being, people who can be trusted, who have credentials and experiences to back what they're saying. And a lot of this, when it comes out in the written word or a video, if you're not crafting it carefully, if you're not thinking about it in terms of how you can be perceived as being sophisticated and above the pale, beyond the pale, then you're doing yourself a disservice. If you're just trying to get something out there quickly, my view is better think twice.
Exactly. If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. So I want to ask you, given that thought leadership is usually embedded in some sort of a marketing function in a professional services firm, and given that traditionally marketing's role is to support sales, business development, et cetera, how do you sort of jive that out? Because in a B2B world, right, in a professional services world, the end of each article or piece isn't click here and take out your Amex and go buy, hey, and, go buy $500,000 worth of consulting. It's not the way it works. That being said, ultimately, I'm sure you come under pressure to say, wait, hold on, let me validate the argument here and show the ROI. So how do you, I guess it's a 2-part question, sort of KPIs, metrics, and then any comments on the ROI of thought leadership investment?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. To some degree, we have to be focused more so today than ever before on what I'll call thought leadership activation. We can't just sit by and hope that our words are received and respected by the targets, the folks that we aim to do business with or convey influence with. So it really comes down to a lot of different things. First, internal evangelism, just letting people know that this material is available. Sadly, I was living under the misperception for a good period of time that because we were sending out emails and letting people know that this has been published and to let their colleagues and their associates within their groups know, it was left on deaf ears. People weren't conveying it. They weren't sharing it. They were internally. Yeah.
Okay. So let's stick with that for a moment. So if the objective of thought leadership, or one of the objectives, is to show our clients and prospects who we are, what we're about, what we stand for, how we think differently, et cetera, and you immediately go there without getting the internal buy-in of the consultants and whatnot that are face-to-face with the clients, you lose, right? So you have to do sort of almost an internal marcom to be able to show the practitioners, wait a minute, these are a series of tools, and here's how you might use them in a client conversation, how do you map it to the sales cycle? So how have you done that?
So we have to work more carefully and more closely with our field marketers, the folks who are working with our account-facing teams to cultivate business, to attract new logos, to extend and try to build deeper, wider relationships with clients and to identify prospects who may want to do business with us. So make sure they're aware of what we're saying, how we're doing it. And then I think there's social evangelism. It's how we promote it outside of the company through our Twitter and LinkedIn handles, through the ability for us to run targeted campaigns through LinkedIn and Twitter,
Yep.
where we can focus on specific categories of company,
Yep.
of individual, of geo, to get the word out better. And
So let's go
we're
back
getting better at it, but we're not quite there yet. We haven't cracked the code, nor has anybody.
So let's go back a half a step. So if you're looking for these internal evangelists, do you have your feelers out for them to be able to get back from them success stories, right? So if we're trying to evangelize to the internal folks, hey, when you have meeting number 2, when you're scoping or, finding solutions, and you can point to this article, whatever, you want to like,
absolutely,
they're in isolation. How do you pull back the success story of Sam in Cleveland had a great experience?
You're so right in saying that. I mean, at our company, there's a lot of one-upsmanship that goes on between practices and lines of business. So if one sees another line of business or practice taking advantage of a piece of thought leadership and getting out in front of the situation, the others want to try to outdo them. So there's a couple of things that we've done in this regard. We use our intranet. We have a thought leadership section on the intranet, and we try to publish articles on how to use thought leadership most effectively. But one that comes to mind that I recently wrote was we put together a 2-part series on how to use AI to extract value from accounts receivable. Really boring topic, I realize. But when it came in as a 10-page white paper, I said I wouldn't publish it unless we did some things with it. We ended up doing it as what I call a transmedia piece of thought leadership that was on our website in 2 parts. One, taking a look at the opportunity, and part 2, looking at our solutions and how you could solve for this. And the piece was very well received. It got a lot of social love. I was seeing a lot of clicks and downloads of some of the materials that were associated with it. So I really said to myself, maybe I need to find out what went right here. I usually have to look at what went wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So I spoke to the subject matter expert, and he said to me, he goes, it was really interesting. I shared it on LinkedIn. I saw what you did. So I amplified what you did through your channels. And interestingly enough, what came back to me was an opportunity at a account that we have in Singapore in the the trade finance area. And we were talking to the CIO for some time, and he had said to me that, what you guys are talking about goes beyond what our current vendor offers. I would love for you to talk to our CFO and the folks in our accounts receivables area, because they're not aware that these solutions currently exist. If we wait for our current vendor, it's on their roadmap, but who knows when they'll get to it. So this opened up an opportunity. So I wrote an article in-house that just went through our intranet and got lots of comments about, I didn't realize that people are doing this. I need to do this too. The second thing I would say is we've created a Cognizant Thought Leadership Hall of Fame. So that every year I put together a blue ribbon panel. We look at what we think are the best and brightest. We ask for submissions. We ask for not just for downloads, but where is this thought leadership moving the needle? How is it opening doors? How is it?
So that internal recognition piece. So that's really, that's interesting. So competition and recognition. Yeah.
So this is the 4th year we've done it, and we got over 40 submissions this year, which was about a third more than we got last year, which was a third more than we got the previous year. So it's building momentum. I think what I need to now do is actually hand out awards, and maybe have once we can get back to normalcy, maybe have an award ceremony for people.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's something to be said about that, whether it's a symbolic piece of tchotch or whatever it is to be representative.
People want to be recognized. Yes, remuneration is important. Yes, compensation is important, but recognition is almost as important.
Exactly. So sort of the trophy, the new trophy case might be the thought leadership ribbons or something like that.
Exactly. So, these are things that we try to do to evangelize internally, to activate thought leadership, to provide a better understanding of what you can do to take this great idea, this great assemblage of material, and turn it into a market advantage. Does it always work? No, but only lately have we actually had examples of how we can actually do this. And you talked about metrics and KPIs and whatnot. I mean, it's hard sometimes to really understand how thought leadership is used because we lose visibility. We can look at downloads. We can look at domains that come to our website that click on things. That's not always a very valid representation of what's going on because
it's a data point. So as we wrap up here, let me sort of just end with this question. So you've been at this for 5 years, which in the world of thought leadership inside of organizations is like a grandfather of thought leadership.
5 years in terms of activation, yes, but
Yes.
13 plus years in terms of actual thought leadership.
Yeah, exactly. So do you see the trend line going up, staying the same, or going down in terms of overall investments that organizations like professional services firms
Yeah, it's
will
a
be
really
making in
good
thought
question.
leadership?
Yeah. We tend to be a lean and mean company, but I normally get whatever resource I need to support the program.
Okay.
So if I come up with a really good idea for something, I have very rarely had anybody say, no, we can't do that, as long as they can justify why, when, and how it'll be used.
Well, and a track record of success. So
And a
it's
track record of success, of course. And, it's got to be data informed. It's got to be data
Sure.
backed. And we have to have metrics to be able to track it. And this is even more important now as the stakes are raised.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we tend to work virtually. So my whole team is spread out globally.
Sure.
And we work with a lot of external parties.
Mm-hmm.
And, the more and the better folks I can bring on who can add value and to really contribute to our thinking and the end execution, I've never had anybody say no to me about. So
that's fantastic.
The demand is only increasing. We produced as a team over 350 assets last year. I'm not saying we came up with all the ideas, but my team touched some element of the end deliverable. So that's almost producing
8 or 10 a week. Yeah.
We're almost like a daily newspaper to some
extent. Yeah. Remember those? Google that if you don't remember those.
Exactly. So I see this function being more important. I see more investment coming to us as long as we use it properly, as long as we can demonstrate the impact, and as long as we can continue to generate the perception that we are a best practice company that has ideas and has a track record of success, and partnership is a means to that end.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey. It's been an interesting one, and I think there's a lot. Well, I know there's a lot I learned, but there's a lot that I think we can all learn about what you're doing and how it's unfolding and how to continue to do it and grow it successfully inside the organization in ways that are aligned with the goals of the business. So thanks, Alan.
Wonderful questions, and quite honestly, these are discussions that we have all the time. Like I said, I don't think we've cracked the code on all of this, but ultimately we're working really hard to get there.
Yeah, no, thank you. Excellent.
Okay. Take care.
If you enjoyed this episode, and I do hope that you did, please join our new LinkedIn group, which is exclusively focused on the organizational thought leader, the person in the corporate world that is using thought leadership as part of their job, whether that's developing thought leadership, whether that's deploying thought leadership, whether that's helping others do so. Please take a look and check out our LinkedIn group. We think you'd get a lot of benefit from that. Thank you.